Thanks for joining me today, everyone. Today, I'm going to be removing this old door and replacing it with a brand new one. There's a lot of rust around the frame, a lot of issues with the door. So instead of just replacing the door, we're going to replace the frame and everything. So as I get into the drywall, here's kind of a situation that I've run into. I have a metal door frame here, and you can see here on the door frame how it sits underneath what used to be the plaster that I bashed out. And that's no big deal on this side. See at the top there, you kind of see there's some leftover plaster. So that's fine on this side because we bashed it all out so I can remove the door frame. But on the hallway side, the other side, that's a big problem because the plaster is embedded into the frame. So I can't remove this side of the frame without breaking the plaster. So what I'm going to do is I drew a line past the edge of the metal frame, and I'm going to cut all the way around. See there, all the way around the whole door frame on the outside. And then I'm going to remove it and replace it. And there'll be gaps here, of course, once I put the new frame in. But I will fill them with hot mud or drywall pieces, whatever ends up fitting in there the best. On this side, I just replaced the whole wall. It's just drywall now, so it wasn't so bad. But on the other side, well, I was trying to save the wall. So here you can see the really thick, about a 1/2 inch thick plaster. And there's actually a drywall underneath that. That's original from the 50s. And I had to cut that away all around the entire door. And the next step here is to pry out all these nails all along the door on both sides, on the other side as well. And then I'll be able to take this frame off and we'll be able to see what we've got here. Now, in the corner here, we've got these nails, which are just teeny tiny, and they're wedged in that corner. So there's a drywall wall right here, and then you got this tiny little bit of space. There's no room to get any kind of crowbar, or even the hammer doesn't even really fit in there. I'm going to try to use needle nose pliers and get them out, but I'm not super hopeful. I also used a multi-tool oscillating blade. But what worked best was to start out at the top, where I could get a pry bar in and then gradually pry out the frame, which pulled the topmost nail out enough that I could grab it with the pliers, then move down and repeat the process. This process definitely destroyed the metal frame, so wear gloves to protect yourself from cuts. Then I was able to just pull the frame right out. All right, the frame is finally out. Here's the door, the opening, I should say. And I've measured it out. I've made sure that it's plumb, straight up and down on both sides, and level at the top. Always want to make sure that that's good first before moving forward. So I have my rough opening dimensions, and I'm going to go get the door. The door was pre-hung, which is a little more expensive, but it makes installation much easier. I used 8-penny nails with a small compressor and a nail gun, which is definitely worth it if you're working alone. You must also make sure that the hinge side of the door is straight and plumb before nailing it in. I used a 6-foot level for that, but a plumb bob could work for much cheaper. Once the hinge side is nailed in, if there are any gaps on the opposite side of the door, this is where you can use shims to make sure that side is plumb as well. I ended up with a significant gap on the door handle side, so after putting in several nails with shims, I filled the extra gaps with minimally expanding foam, also called window and door foam. Do not use regular spray foam. It can expand too much and completely ruin your job. One mistake I made here was to shim and nail the top frame of the door for stability. I ended up having to take those nails and shims out later as it caused the door to stick when I opened and closed it. So I've run into a couple problems that I kind of knew were coming. First one here is the door frame, because the plaster was on there before. You can see there's drywall and then plaster over the top of it and some kind of top coat on that. There we go. So you can see because of that, the door frame comes much short of where it needs to be. So this will have to be brought out. So I'm just going to put another piece of wood over this and then put a piece of drywall over that. And then this door jamb will also need to be brought out. So this corner is really just a complete mess. The metal door frame was so far embedded, I had to chip away all the plaster. I put up this drywall here, but you can see that it extends over this side. So I'm essentially having to create the new 90-degree angle here. I bought this guy. It's metal with paper over it to create a nice, rigid 90-degree angle. And hopefully that'll work. I will, of course, have to fill in a little bit there ahead of time underneath it. And then, of course, I'll have to fill over it. But luckily, the door casement, the stuff that's right here, I'll put this on this side here and then also over here. And so that'll kind of cover a lot of it. But I've got to get some mud on there, some joint compound. So I'll be using the USG all-purpose. This is a very heavy compound, and I'm using that intentionally. Hopefully get this up over here, and then get a tape layer on everything around here. And then I can move to drywall the inside. Unfortunately, the footage for installing the corner didn't turn out to be usable, but I'll give a few tips on how I made it work. I pre-filled with a solid bed of mud before putting the corner up, and used a speed square to make sure that the corner was actually 90 degrees once it was up. Don't push too hard because you could find the corner sinking into the hole. If the corner does sink like too far into the hole, just leave it. Let it dry, and you can always mud over it later, but trying to readjust it a lot of times ends up causing more issues than solutions. Here you see me drywalling the right side of the door frame. This is the side without the corner. Taping together the old plaster on the right side of it with the new drywall on the left side is basically the same process as what's called a butt joint. That's where you pre-fill the open space, then put the tape up, then mud over it, and let it dry before adding another coat. Drywalling is its own field of expertise that is really outside the scope of this video. If you'd like more information, at least from YouTube, I recommend The Vancouver Carpenter or That Kilted Guy. They're both great resources. And here's what the mostly completed door looks like. It just needs a little more trim, a coat of paint, and of course a doorknob, and it'll be all done. Well, that's about it, everyone. Thanks for joining me. Please like and subscribe. I hope to see you for the next video.